Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hanging in. Whoopio. Get off. How are you doing?
Good. Good. Who do you have?
I have Bino.
Oh, cool.
That's you. Stop barking. Stop barking. Where's the video? Oh, there it is. Ooh. Stop barking. Stop barking. Are you done? Back up. Go away. Okay. Good job. Good job, buddy. Hello. There she is.
Hey.
There
Hey.
he is.
Oh, who's that?
Bino.
Oh.
That's you. We haven't eaten any cats yet. Yet. Hi, Bino. What are you doing? You don't know. He's like, what's happening over there? Where'd you go? Oh, he left. Did you leave me? Oh, you're scared of cooking. I love you so much.
What is it?
Oh my gosh. The mutes though.
Hey,
He's scared of
student.
cooking.
What was he scared of?
Cooking. The stove was on.
Oh.
He's hiding in the bathtub.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Jess, are you willing to answer some questions? Or are you here to listen?
I was just gonna tune in and see what, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's something that I can help with.
Okay, yeah, I don't necessarily want this to be the Sheila answering all the questions, so I want as many people as possible to join in. So
Sure.
if something
Happy to.
feel free to. Welcome, everyone. We're going to be getting started in a couple minutes. Good to see some faces coming on.
Come here, buddy. Are you okay? No? Are you okay? Is you gonna make it? Here.
Yeah, but there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
There is the behavioral. Oh, hi. Sorry.
Welcome to everyone who's coming on. I'm Sheila. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes.
You did it again.
All right. Get started, Kelly.
Sure. Hi, guys, and welcome to the Doghouse. I am Kelly Duer, the foster care specialist for Maddie's Fund, and my co-host is veterinary behaviorist, Dr. Sheila Segurson, the director of research for Maddie's Fund.
But mostly we're just two people who are passionate about dogs, foster care, and helping people to live with dogs, and that's why we're all here today.
Our topic for the session is helping dogs to adjust to a home, but really kind of anything goes. We really want to have a conversation and not just talk at you guys. So we have 30 minutes. You can raise your hand if you click on the participants button, or you can type in the chat box, either way, or unmute yourself and ask a question. Make sure to unmute before you do.
And I like the first question that got typed in the chat. How many dogs do you have? Why doesn't everyone type that how many dogs they have? And we'll see who wins and who loses. I don't know what winning is. Right, we got a couple people. So far, I either win or I lose, but still winning or losing. A lot of dogs joining today. Awesome. And we have some people who have none yet, which hopefully you can remedy that situation soon. All right, well, we have some people who submitted questions in advance, but if you do have, so this, like I said, we want this to be pretty informal. And so we're going to throw the questions out there. And if one of you is someone who wants to take a stab at answering that question, please raise your hand to answer that question. And if no one wants to answer it, I can go ahead and get started with it. Kelly, do you want to introduce the first question?
Sure. This is from Lauren in Austin, Texas. Can you talk about introducing my foster dog to household dogs?
So interesting, introducing the foster dog to a dog in the house. Anybody want to tackle that one? Raise your hand if you do, or type in the chat if you do. So far, I see nobody. Everybody wants to relax and do nothing. That's absolutely fine. So introducing foster dog to household dogs. First question I have is, and it's not a question because I don't know if Lauren, type in the chat if you're here, but I don't know if you're here. But part of the answer to this question depends on whether it's okay for you to introduce your foster dog to household dogs, because sometimes our foster dogs have medical conditions or physical conditions or behavioral conditions that make us not want to introduce that dog to our household dog. So I'm answering this question assuming that you've been given approval to introduce your dog to your household dog. And another part of my answer to this question always depends on the dog. So I can give some general thoughts about this. And general thoughts is that I try to introduce them in ways that reduce conflict between the dogs. So not introducing where they're in situations where they're going to run up on each other. So introducing them in situations where we might be taking them on a walk together, or oftentimes I'll have my foster dog out in the backyard and letting the foster dog roam around, and then bring my dog out on a leash. But it really depends. Am I worried about the foster dog's behavior? Am I worried about my dog scaring that foster dog? So depending on that foster dog's personality really helps me to decide how best to introduce. But for the most part, what I'm trying to do is do things that reduce conflict. And that's why doing things like going on walks where the dogs are walking parallel to each other so they can kind of see each other and sniff each other's pee and get used to each other tend to work well. Kelly, anything to add there? Anybody else want to add anything there?
No, I'm a believer in the parallel walk.
Anyone else?
I know this is not completely Austin Pets Alive based, but we recommend not introducing dogs on leash because of there's a lot dogs can choose fight or flight. So if you take away the choice of flight, then they only have one other reaction that they can have. So our dog behavior follow-up team has a document on how to introduce new dogs into the household, and it starts with tandem walks like that, and then putting drag leashes on them so they just drag behind them, and then having like a neutral place that you can introduce them, like the backyard, like Dr. Segurson was saying.
And I forgot that we cannot share documents in the chat. We don't have a link to that introducing dogs to dogs document online, do we, Jess?
Yeah, I'll share the Google link, the Google Doc link.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and that's why the leash issue is why I oftentimes do backyard intros in my house, so that I'm not worried about my dogs being on leash because I trust my dog's behavior, but that way the foster dog has freedom and can retreat and get away if they need to. And my dogs, some of them might be on leash, some of them not, but very good point. All right. Any questions from any of you? Raise your hand if you have a question. Don't see any raised hands.
So the next one is, sorry. What should we do if our foster starts showing signs of aggression toward us, like guarding or stranger danger?
So the first thing to do if you're, well, actually, sorry, I jumped right in answering when I shouldn't have. Anyone want to take this one? Nobody. The first thing that I recommend doing is staying as calm as possible, taking deep breaths, remembering that our dogs cannot talk to us and they cannot say, hey, what the heck are you doing? Aggression is their way of telling us that they're uncomfortable with something. So the first thing to do is to acknowledge and respect that communication, meaning if they're saying stay away, then stay away. And if we need to if the dog is showing serious signs of aggression and we need to remove ourselves from the situation or put the dog in a room alone to keep everybody safe, then that's certainly what we need to do. A big part of it is recognizing the circumstances where the aggression is occurring and avoiding doing the things that are provoking that behavior, and contacting your foster coordinator or someone at the organization where you're fostering to talk to them about it, to talk through it in terms of what you should do. I don't want to talk too much about what to do when aggression happens, because it really should be managed on a case-by-case basis, and it is really something that your foster coordinator or whoever you're working with at the shelter should know about. Anyone want to add anything else there? But the big thing is just stop doing whatever caused that behavior.
I always recommend leaving a drag leash on a dog. It's just a lightweight leash that's attached to their collar at all times. So if you do need to separate the dog from you, you have a point of contact and you're not reaching for their collar at that moment. And then being able to contact your point of contacts to follow up and see what you need to do to keep yourself safe.
Absolutely.
And Michaela asks, is a drag leash different than just a regular leash? It can be the same as a regular leash. I like to use thin leashes without any handles or anything in it for drag leashes, because then it doesn't get caught when you're moving around the house. So I really like using, those veterinary hospital leashes that you get when you go to a vet and they slip that leash on your dog, and it's just this thin leash that most people don't like at all. I like cutting off the handle of that and using it as a drag leash because it moves around the house really easily. But for the most part, yeah, it's just a regular leash that they drag around the house. Good question. And Michaela asks whether Awesome Pets Alive gives a drag leash to fosters. Jess, do you know that?
It's entirely possible. You can definitely ask for a drag leash, but if you come to the shelter with a leash, you can literally just walk in your house and drop your leash until you can have a different one. But Awesome Pets Alive definitely has lightweight leashes that they'll probably let you have if you ask for one.
But at this point in time, it is probably safer for you just to use a leash that you have rather than coming to the shelter, given everything that we're dealing with right now.
We have a question from Kelly. How do you make your first night most successful?
Anyone want to take that one? I'm going to keep asking. Making the first night most successful, once again, it always depends on the dog, but for the most part, I really feed off of what the dog is giving me and try to make things as low-key and not making a big deal about things as possible. For the most part, I'm trying to avoid lots of excitement. The dog that you've brought home may have been in the shelter for a week. It may have been in the shelter for a month. It may have been in the shelter for a year before you brought them home. And whatever length of time the dog's been in the shelter, transitioning into home is a different experience, and it can be really overwhelming, even though your home is an absolutely wonderful place to be. So for the most part, I'm going to manage where my dog can go in the house and follow the recommendations that were given to me. If it's been recommended that I keep the dog in a crate, I'm going to keep it in a crate. I'm not going to force interactions on the dog. So if my foster dog is coming up to me and pushing his hand into my head wanting me to pet him, I'll pet him. But if he's off doing his own thing, I'm going to let him go off and do his own thing, because I want him to be able to adjust and get comfortable in my home, and I want him to want attention from me. And depending on the household, usually I don't recommend introducing to other animals right away for certain. I want them to just adjust to me and the environment first. definitely don't have friends and other family over, the tendency is to want to do that because you're so excited about your foster dog. But we really want them to be able to kind of decompress and relax and get comfortable in the environment. So starting to set up structures and routine for your dog and just kind of letting them chill. So it's kind of not making a big deal about things. Kelly, do you have anything to add there?
For the dogs that are like super shelter stressed, like they're spinning in their kennels or, happy tail, that kind of thing. I like to start with a really long walk and just get as much of the energy out as possible. And also have puzzle toys and things so that when we get home, the dog's leftover energy isn't just going out into space and, going, there's a way to like direct it without, the dog kind of is able to direct themselves to something to do.
All right. Anything else from anybody about that first night and making it successful? All right. Should we jump on to the next one, Kelly?
Sure. This one is from Lauren in Austin. Can you give us some potty training tips?
Potty training tips. First tip is don't ever assume that a dog is house trained. And I just saw that just added Austin Pets Alive Dog Enrichment's suggestions to our chat. So definitely check that out. But potty training tips, don't assume anything. A dog might be very well house trained, but put them in a new environment and it's still a different environment than they're useful, and they might be stressed and lose their normal house training skills. So treat them like a puppy. And what that means to me is keeping them somewhere where you're carefully watching and managing them. And for some dogs, that means keeping them on a leash so they stay near you. For some dogs, if you have a scared dog, I'm not going to force it to stay on a leash next to me. But some dogs, that means keeping them in a crate when we're not directly supervising them. So managing their environment so that they're staying close to us or staying out of areas where they can wander off and do their business indoors, while taking them out every 3 hours or so when we're awake with treats, or when we're home. And well, I guess most of us are home nowadays, right? When we're home, and taking them out, bringing treats with us, and just puppy stuff in terms of when they go. Praise, give them a treat. Level of excitement for praise really depends on the dog. If I have a really shy dog, my praise is going to be really calm. If I have a kind of regular dog, my praise is going to be more excited. Giving them a treat, and then give them some freedom after they have eliminated. So really pretty basic stuff. And then if they don't go, bringing them back inside and either keeping them attached to me via a leash or putting them back in a crate. So if they go, they get freedom for a little while. If they don't go, keeping them somewhere where they won't go, and making sure that if they do have accidents in the house, remembering that it's our job to teach them what we want to do and not getting mad at them, not screaming and yelling at them so they end up being scared of us if they go in a place where we don't like. And then I see that Anna chimed in, what about potty training a dog that seems to hold it when you're outside and then goes as soon as you go back inside? That's pretty common in my experience with new dogs because, wow, I have a beam of sunlight coming in on me with new dogs, because the outside is so exciting and interesting and they get really distracted when they're outside, and then they go back inside and it's really boring. So it can be a challenging problem to manage, but for the most part, I recommend picking a place that you take your foster dog to, and picking a place that's the kind of the quietest, most boring place you can find, and picking that place, taking them there, staying there, and kind of standing in one place, not doing a ton of walking around, standing in place until hopefully that place gets boring enough that they say, oh, it's boring out here, I have to pee, I guess I'm going to pee. And if that doesn't happen, I've been standing in one place for 10 minutes, they still haven't peed, I'm going to take them back inside and put them in a crate if that's what I'm using. If I have a dog who has a more serious house training problem, so I'm going to put them in a crate, give them something good to play with while they're in that crate, and then try again a little bit later. But a lot of it is just patience, consistency, and not putting them in situations where they're going to have an accident.
Okay, so we've got a bunch more, but let's see. How do any particular tips for potty training when living in a high rise?
That's a challenging one. I lived in New York City for a year, and it's definitely challenging when you're on the 23rd floor and you have a dog who's not completely house trained. And in those situations, I did put pee pads around in my apartment so that if the dog had to go and I couldn't get them down in time, they had the pee pads that they could use inside, but also just doing my best to get them out as frequently as I can initially so that they're not dying on the way down in the elevator to get outside. But pee pads are your friend. Or also, in those situations, I've also used, you can buy those kind of fake grass things that have a tray and then some fake grass on top. I've used that successfully too in situations with more challenging dogs.
This one is from Haley in Washington. She is fostering Jackie Riley. Would you?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. She was wondering if you could discuss working with a reactive dog. The dog is
For
reactive.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Haley, I think that Haley is here. Haley, do you want to add any specifics about your dog? You can go ahead and I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
I live in Washington, D.C., and if she can see a dog in our house, she'll bark at it through the window. If she can hear a dog in the hallway, she'll bark at it. If we're on leash, she'll bite another dog or people that pass us. And we've taken Prozac and we're working on training and we're like doing a lot of stuff. But I'm always interested on hearing like more advice from people and like how to help her and how to talk to doctors about it so that I don't like scare them away.
And is she a big dog or a little dog?
She's a Jack Russell. She's like 25 pounds.
Okay.
Sort of a medium size. Like I can restrain her on the leash.
She's the one that's like a Herbie size.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys can see my Herbie dog. He's 17 now, so he's not as reactive anymore, but he was a very reactive dog in his day. So anyone want to jump on this question, or we can talk about it? Raise your hand if you want to help out. Nobody. So reactivity, obviously tends to be a longer term issue because that's not something that we're going to fix in a day. The first thing I usually want to do with my reactive dogs is make sure that I'm using training equipment that allows me to have good control of the dog and manage the dog in a way that I feel confident about. Usually less of an issue with a smaller dog, but I tend to like to use head collars and gentle leader because then I have control of their head. So if they're trying to lunge or go after anything, I have control of their head so they really can't go anywhere. But I know so I've used a lot of gentle leaders over the years, but my small dog Herbie hated a head collar and never ever got used to it. So I didn't use it for him because it was very stressful to him. So I use a tool that gives me control of the dog so that I feel confident in that control, but also I want to try to introduce that. I want to try to introduce that to the dog in a way that is slow so that they can feel comfortable. What type of training equipment do you use on your dog?
We use a gentle leader when I walk her.
Right, and that's great that she tolerates. So that's step one, is just making sure that you have control and you're able to manage them well outside. And then otherwise, for me, it's really a couple different things. One, in situations where I'm not actively working on training, avoiding having them, as much as possible, avoiding having them see things. Do you have your dog with you?
Yeah, she's barking at something in the hallway.
Aww. So cute. So I usually try to avoid circumstances where they might react to them as much as possible while I'm in training mode, to try to reinforce that cycle in the brain of I see that thing and I react, while working on things like eye contact cues and walking nicely on leash and things like that, so that I can do things like first working on it in non-distracting situations, and then gradually building up the distractingness of the environment so that I can eventually get to a place where my foster dog can see something. I can cue my foster dog to look at me, and they can look at me instead of the whatever it is they don't like and are reactive to, and can get rewarded for it. That tends to work really well, but it obviously takes time. All of this takes time. The other thing that I like a lot, but also takes time, is teaching them that they can look at something. So the second they look at something, you use a word like yes, or you can use a clicker, and reward them for that look at them. And then that cues them to look at you, and now they're looking away, and then you move away. So kind of the look at that game. Have you heard of that type of game?
Yeah, so I have a hard time getting her to break eye contact, I guess. Like, we're at the point where I'm still just like shoving treats in her face to try to get her to not bark, because we haven't quite mastered look at me yet. Like, we're kind of stuck at calm.
Yeah, and that's certainly what you have to do in the early stages to kind of keep things under control and avoid significant reactivity. And sometimes you can do things, it really depends on your setup and your environment. But with my dog, when he was young and reactive, I knew that if I walked by, there were certain houses I walked by in my neighborhood where there was a dog at the fence, and he would react as soon as that dog started reacting. I would stop 30 feet away from that house, wait for that dog to start making noises, and then cue my dog to look at me. So it's trying to find situations, either getting friends to help or finding situations where there will be a dog around, and you can do setups to have your dog at a distance far enough away so that they're not as reactive, so you can find an opportunity to reward them. And I see that Jess shared some great videos on getting dogs used to gentle leaders. Thank you for that, Jess. But I feel like we could probably spend 2 hours talking about helping your reactive dog to adapt. Kelly, do you have any quick tips to add?
Make sure that the treat that you have is like super high value. You might try like actual pieces of steak at first. She
gets cheese. If it's not high value enough, she'll just ignore me.
Yeah. Totally. And also practice it in the house, like when you don't have distractions, so that we're doing a lot of, I've actually found, just generally, I think this helps a lot of dogs, trick training, I think, is helping, because like now she's better at listening to me, I guess. So she's learned a lot of tricks.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, and I found that helps with a lot of dogs too, because with many of these dogs that they don't even think, they just react. You give their brain something else to do. Oh, this is my routine of doing tricks or whatever. Their brain goes into, oh, I'm in this mode now and not reactive mode. And so those types of things can help really well. What types of tricks have you trained that you found helpful?
Leave It was pretty good. I'm trying to do touch so that she'll touch my hand so I can give her a treat so that she'll stop looking at another dog. She'll do it in the house. She won't do it outside. I taught her roll over. She's older, so she's already trained. She's like 7. So we're just kind of trying to build on anything she knew, like combinations, like sit, stay, and then I leave the room, and getting her to stay when she can't see me and stuff like that.
If anyone has other types of cues that they've trained that you found help really well, please type it in the chat area. It sounds like you're on the right track. It's just a matter of setting scenarios so that you can be far enough away from something that your dog tends to react to, so that you can reward her before that reactivity starts. And then over time, just gradually getting closer and closer. And Wailani's talking about Find It and a chin rest. I really like using Find It as a cue in terms of that. Tends to work really well in terms of getting them focused on something else, and initially teaching it by just tossing treats on the ground and then saying Find It. Well, and then Wailani also mentions using scents for a dog who's not interested in food. That's a great idea.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Sure. Thanks, Haley. What's next?
Kelly says, what about dogs who show distress when placed in a crate? Should you skip using the crate and use baby gates instead?
That's a really good question. All of these are really good questions. Anyone want to jump on that one? So dogs who are distressed about crates, meaning, and assuming that when you say distressed about a crate, this is a dog who is doing things like barking, howling, scratching, and doing it, and it doesn't stop in 2 to 3 minutes. It continues and continues. And those types of dogs, I want to do one of two things. We're obviously in a different world now where many of us can be home a lot, which is great. So an ideal world for right now, I wouldn't be keeping that dog in the crate. I would be using things. So sometimes something like an X-Pen, they'll tolerate. Other times X-Pens are terrifying too. But for the most part, when a dog feels significant distress in a crate, I'm going to be talking to my shelter and the vets about whether there's anything I can do in terms of medication to help reduce this dog's anxiety, so that it can stay in a crate. And usually that's step number one. And then if I'm trying to work on this problem, sometimes I'm going to have to leave, right? Even where we are right now, we still have to go to the grocery store. So ideally in that situation, I'm going to have 2 crates. One is a crate that I put the dog in the times that I have to leave them, if I have to leave them. If I have somewhere else that I can leave that the dog is going to be safe and not destroy my house and not escape from my house, that is my preference in these situations. But if I have a situation where I have to put them in a crate because they're going to escape from my house, I put them in that crate, managed with medications, but then I have a training crate that I use for, this is the safe crate. So I only use this crate when I'm training you to get comfortable to the crate by doing desensitization and counter conditioning exercises to gradually encourage them to enter that crate. I hope that helps a little bit. Anyone have anything else to add? All right. Haley leaves the TV on, and yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes leaving some background noise can help for some dogs. Other times it doesn't help at all. Some people saying having another dog in the environment helps. Many dogs don't care about having another dog in the environment, but yeah, there's lots of things that you can try. You can try giving them food dispensing toys, but dogs who are significantly distressed are not going to eat those toys. And Heather asked whether we have to have a crate. That really depends on the organization that you are fostering for. So I don't want to recommend anything that goes against what your organization is recommending, because some organizations recommend always crating when you're not with the dog to make sure they're not going to destroy anything in your house or getting into any trouble. Other organizations don't recommend that. So I would follow whatever you've been told. And if you're not sure what you've been told, definitely just ask.
Okay. Next question asks, I've had my foster dog in my home for a day and he's sleeping so much. Is there something wrong with him? He's on medication for stress, and is that making him sleepy?
So remember, I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but our foster dogs have been in the shelter environment, and we know that, and we have research that is telling us that dogs don't rest as well in the shelter environment as they do in a home environment. So think of it like being in a hospital where there's always someone coming and going, and even at night there might not be someone coming and going, but one dog wakes up and starts barking and everybody starts barking. So dogs don't rest as well as we would like them to in the shelter environment. So it's really, really common that when we get them into a home environment, sometimes they oftentimes do one of two things. One is a heck of a lot of sleeping because they're so happy they can finally relax and sleep. That's what they do. Other dogs are really kind of hyperactive, or they seem hyperactive, and they're running all over this place exploring everything, and they do that for a day and then they sleep. So sleeping is pretty normal, but you do want to look at the dog and make sure, are they eating, are they drinking, are they behaving normally in every other way than that. So if everything else is about them that is normal, odds are that they're just getting used to and just relaxing and sleeping. In terms of the medication, and can the medication for stress and anxiety make your dog sleepy? Potentially, those types of medications can make foster dogs sleepy, but more situations than not, it's because of just getting out of the shelter and needing that time to sleep. But if you have any questions, I would contact your foster coordinator or whoever in your organization that helps you out with these types of things.
Cool. I'm worried about COVID-19, but my foster dog is super energetic. Is it okay to take him for a walk?
So most of us are sheltering in place right now, and everything that I've seen, and I certainly know in my community, I see lots of us going out, and my dogs are actually going on more walks than they normally do these days, in that most of the shelter in place orders say that it's okay to go outside for outdoor activity as long as you're maintaining social distancing and not doing things like going to public parks and things like that, and dog parks and things like that. So definitely okay to take them on a walk as long as you are social distancing, getting rid of that energy, getting them out in the environment, but also paying attention to your foster dog. If you have a foster dog who's pretty scared or reactive to things, I would be doing everything I can to give them most of their exercise indoors so that I'm not exposing them to things that they're scared of. And I hope that answers that question. And I see a comment from Rachel that says everybody probably saw that about her foster breaking out of the crate, and when she did, she just went to the couch and fell asleep, so I knew she was fine, and recommending video. Really good point, Rachel, and that some of these dogs, separation anxiety is a term that gets overused. Some of these dogs are just bored and they just need something like a food dispensing toy in their crate. Some of these dogs, the issue is the crate, and once they're out of the crate, they're fine. Other of these dogs have true separation anxiety, where the anxiety is about separation from people. So doing video and trying different things to find out what this dog's challenges or problems are really, really important. And it's so easy to get video nowadays.
My dog ate through 2 doors until before we realized that he just has to be able to see the front door. And if he can't see the front door, he freaks out. But if he's in the living room, he's fine.
Yeah, every dog is different, and it's just figuring out, it's detective work, working with these dogs with anxiety oftentimes to find out what is the stimulus. I've had situations where people thought it was separation anxiety, but learned that it was the beep that their phone made from text messages that were causing the distress. So just because they have anxiety does not mean it's because of the crate or because of separation from you. There's lots of different things that can be causing it.
Point. Do we have any other questions? I think that was the last one that we had.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've noticed separation anxiety seems like it's getting worse. Do you have any recommendations on like what you might do to kind of stop that?
Is this the same dog that is your reactive little dog, or a different one?
Yeah, it's the same dog. She didn't really have separation anxiety before, but it seems like she's starting to get it.
So that's a really
Might
good.
just like me more. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be, but I'm glad you mentioned this, because this is something that I wanted to make sure we bring up and talk about. With many of us bringing these foster dogs home right now and being stuck in our homes, we're with our dogs 24/7 a lot of the time. And then the few times that we do have to leave, I'm not surprised that some dogs might be experiencing anxiety, because you're here, I love you so much, you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and oh my gosh, you're gone, what the heck? And so I definitely recommend with all of our foster dogs doing little periods of separation from day one to get them used to the concept that you're not always there and it's normal for them to be without you. So that's, and doing it in beginning with very short durations and gradually building up the duration. And so, Haley, you may need to do a little bit of that with your foster dog. But the other thing, I know you said that your foster dog is on medication. I would be talking to the veterinarian that works with you to manage that particular dog's behavior to see if maybe something else needs to get added in with that dog to help lower their overall anxiety level so that you can start being more successful with your dog's reactivity and maybe help the separation anxiety as well. All right, I see a comment from Robert, and we had said this is going to be 30 minutes, but Kelly and I will stay on as long as there's still, well, I will. I don't know if Kelly can.
I will, yes.
As long as there's questions. If anybody has to go, we certainly understand, but we're certainly willing to answer questions. So the next one is from Robert. My roomie and I are on the foster list, but have never had their own dog. Had one growing up. Any individual tips or good introductory resources? Anybody want to take this one?
My first, just one tip, let the dog come to you. You know, pretend they're another person. And if they want pets, you know, they'll come to you. But just really kind of learn about body language, and that can really help in some of your interactions.
So that's a great suggestion. Anybody else? Any thoughts, comments? You can feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in. Jess, do you have anything to add?
There we go. I foster and take dogs that have been in shelter for many, many days, months, sometimes years. And just like Kelly said, like letting them come to you, but also like understand that it might be hours before they can settle down. They're just really anxious about being in a home. And the best thing you can do is to ignore them and let them make good choices. Know that they probably won't eat. We're getting a lot of, my dog hasn't eaten in 12 hours. He didn't eat his dinner. He didn't eat his breakfast. And dogs are generally okay as long as they're drinking water for about 2 or 3 days. And then we're going to start to get really worried about that. But you can also add some delicious treats to their food to help them maybe more interested in eating. Know that they're going to sleep a lot, and that's okay. The dogs that I bring home usually have some sort of behavior that we already know about. So I always leave a drag leash on them, and that can be just the leash you brought them home on or a lighter weight leash, just so you have a point of contact if things get a little hairy, or if they're hiding someplace, you have a point of contact that you can help guide them out of spaces that they don't need to be in. And then, you know, just like treating them like a puppy, taking them out after they eat, making sure you're getting lots of walks in, and wow, that was a sweet. And just, you know, letting them take the time to settle in. And then if you're fostering for Awesome Pets Alive, they do recommend keeping your dog separate from the foster dog for the first 2 weeks, just so everyone can acclimate to that, the new environment. But we know that that's not always possible. So just taking it slow and giving your resident dog breaks if they're telling you things. Growling is okay. It's the way the dogs communicate to us. So if a dog growls, just take that as a warning and don't keep pushing them. And then, yeah, just like giving them the time to relax and really feel comfortable in your home. And then also putting routine into their lives. So if you know you don't want them on the couch, then make sure they're not getting on the couch. And, you know, just like making sure you know what your rules are before you bring the dog home so you can enforce that, and then not like 4 days later be like, oh, I don't want the dog on the couch anymore. And start trying to put that rule into place. So I would suggest just having, you know, a set of rules that you're pretty sure you're going to go by, and then following those rules and just making sure everybody in the household is on board with that. And a lot of dogs, especially from Awesome Pets Alive, need shared responsibilities. So just, you know, making sure that whoever feeds them in the morning, somebody else feeding them in the afternoon, going for walks and things like that to just help acclimate them to the new routine, and just be patient. And at Awesome Pets Alive, we do have resources for you that we're more than happy to share with you. So don't be afraid to reach out before things get bad. Reach out way before that. If you're just like, this is weird, we definitely have a team in place that can help you answer those questions way ahead of them getting really bad.
Thanks, Jess. All super good points. And so Awesome Pets Alive has resources. Many shelters have resources hopefully your shelter has a Facebook group that, or a Maddie's Pet Forum or some other type of group that you can join and ask questions there. We all love to talk about dogs all the time, so don't be shy, ask a question. And then I also want to reinforce what Jess said about rules and structure, because you'll read things that say don't allow the dog on the bed. You have to go through the door first. Those particular things are not the important pieces. The important pieces are that you have rules for your dog, and once you decide those rules, you enforce them. So if they have to sit before their leash gets put on to go for a walk, they don't go on a walk unless they sit. Or if you're having lots of trouble with that, you ask help for that. But deciding what those rules are, but if you read about the dog has to do this, this, and this, unless it's something that your foster coordinator is telling you because this is particular for this dog that you need to follow the rule. Otherwise, it's just rules are good. And I see from Kelly's iPhone, how do you respond if the resident dog snaps at the foster? Usually I do not. Usually I say thank you. A dog that growls or snaps, I say thank you for not biting. Thank you for letting this other dog know that you don't like what they're doing. And hopefully the foster dog learned from that situation and backed off. So that's normal communication. If the dog, so if your foster dog, but it also depends on context, right? And that if your foster dog is just lying there and your resident dog walks by the foster dog and snaps, that's probably a more concerning situation. But for the most part, if they're just getting to know each other a little bit and one of them snaps or growls a little bit, that's normal and appropriate communication. So as long as the other dog is responding okay to it and responding appropriately, then I don't have a problem with it at all. All right, and I see a question from Michaela about, is separation okay if I take my resident dog, say to the dog park at my apartment, or would both have to be left alone? I know that, I don't know where you live, Michaela, but most people aren't taking dogs to dog parks these days. I'm interested to see if you live somewhere where that is still happening, but maybe you can do that and social distance, but it's a challenge for sure. But for another reason, certainly I do that on a case-by-case basis, because some dogs get super, super attached to your dog, and you leaving and your dog leaving is super, super stressful. Other dogs couldn't care less about each other. So it really depends, but for the most part, yes, it's usually okay to take one and not the other. And I think you guys saw, I typed in the chat, I have 5 dogs. I can't walk all my dogs at the same time. So it's normal in my household that different dogs go out at different times. So depends on the situation, but oftentimes, yeah, taking one and not the other is okay.
And one just aside, don't take your foster dog to the dog park. I would say I don't know of any programs that allow that. So
yeah, no, I don't. And she didn't say that. She said
Mm-hmm.
take her resident dog, but very good point. All right. Any other questions? We want to thank you guys for joining us on this Thursday evening. Thanks, Jess, for all your help in answering questions. We hope you guys found this worthwhile. If you did, we certainly might be doing this again. Love the opportunity to just kind of check in with everybody and see how things are going. But thank you all so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.